Where do pastors fit in to the New Testament church? Hi, welcome to today's little lesson. We've been talking about church in its simplest form and how any Christian can start a simple church because it doesn't require a building. It doesn't require, any salaries or staff members or worship teams or programs and all that kind of stuff. It's just stripped down to the barest essentials of what the New Testament teaches church is, what Jesus taught, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. See, obviously Jesus envisioned that would be happening, right? That's not just numbers he pulled out of the air that are, it's a meaningless example. No, Jesus envisioned that there would be gatherings of 2 or 3 in his name, and that he would be there in their midst in a special way, and it would be blessed. Woo! And if you've ever experienced that, you know it's absolutely delightful. All right, so we know that the Bible talks about the fact that God has appointed in the church apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, and so forth. And so where do pastors fit into the simple church? Well, first of all, if he was a biblical pastor, he knows that his first responsibility is to be making disciples. Who make disciples? Who make disciples? Who make disciples? Etc., 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 etc. Most pastors aren't doing that. They're getting people to come and listen to them month after month, year after year, and they want them to stay listening forever, sitting there in the pew. And they don't. Of course, they get disgruntled or tired or whatever and move on eventually. But that's what most pastors seem to be all about, getting people to come and listen to them. They're not making disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. So that's square one. And the model that we see of the pastor today is not a biblical model. Read the qualifications for elders, which is equivalent to a pastor. Those are synonymous terms in the New Testament. Elders, pastors, overseers, they're all synonymous. I can prove that very easily by looking at all those passages, okay? What we see today doesn't resemble that, because all the things that Paul listed in Titus and Timothy for the qualifications to be elders, it's all character issues, spiritual maturity issues. Nothing to do with personal charisma and outstanding leadership capabilities and administering a church. Oh my goodness. It's all about making disciples. And so, dear pastor, are you making disciples? If you're not, when you stand before Jesus, you're going to be really regretting that you didn't make disciples. And you make disciples the way Jesus made disciples. He preached sermons, sure, but he modeled before a small group, and he poured himself deeply into a small group, and ultimately it multiplied exponentially. That's the plan of God. So where do pastors fit into simple churches? Well, they might be leading a simple church temporarily until another leader arises, maybe, something like that. Or they might be meeting with leaders of simple churches that they've planted and having an ongoing discipling relationship with their disciples. Because it stands to reason that if you're going to disciple someone, you got to be ahead of them, at least by a little bit, right? And so, if you have an ongoing discipling relationship, as your disciples come to you with questions, as they're leading their simple churches, as they're growing, as maybe they're planting new churches, you see it kind of like a pyramid of sorts that just keeps expanding and expanding. And there are multiple of these pyramids within, the big pyramid of the church. And pastors find their delight in discipling those who they then are essentially duplicating themselves. And so that's where pastors fit in. They are, according to Ephesians, equipping the saints for the work of ministry. So if the people that you're ministering to aren't ministering themselves, you're failing. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're not equipping them for the work of service. And so in the format that I described in our last little lesson, which if you missed that one, well, you know, when you finish this one, go back to that one, because I talked about the format for accomplishing that in a small group setting, where you look back, you look up, and you look forward, and it's a beautiful system of love and accountability and intentionality to grow. So I speak from some degree of experience here, and more on the wrong side than the right side, because I spent 20 years of my life trying to be something that the Bible says doesn't really exist. That is, be a pastor of a box church, where, you know, I was the jack of all trades, and I was by far and away I was the attraction. People came to the church because they liked me, and when they stopped liking me, that's when they left. So I've been there, done that. I know what I'm talking about, and I've asked God to forgive me for those years where I was, you know, giving sermons and trying to get more people to come so I could think I was successful. Oh God, have mercy on everybody who's still doing that, and there are many. And ask God to forgive me for that. And as I shared my church journey, you can go back quite a few little lessons now, and you can hear about my story. But today, I'm a part of a simple church, and we gather together and we look back at what we said we were going to do after last time we gathered, and then we look up to see what God's saying to us now, and then we look forward to see how we're going to talk about how we're going to react to what God has just revealed to us. Okay? And so, am I a pastor? I don't care. I'm not looking for titles, and Jesus is against this title thing, right? He explicitly said, don't call anybody, you know, father. Don't be letting anybody call you teacher or leader, because you got one father, one teacher, one leader. That's God, your Father. So the same thing with all the rest of these titles that everyone's trying to. Well, I'm a bishop. Oh Lord, I'm a senior bishop. You know, call me pastor so-and-so, call me apostle so-and-so, call me prophet. You won't find that in the New Testament. Paul never gave himself a title of apostle. Come on. He said, Paul, called as an apostle. That's the ministry that I've been entrusted with. It's not a title. You don't always put the word apostle in front of the word Paul, because that's the title of respect that I deserve as the professional here. No, I'm getting into trouble here. But, you know, I'm 60 years old, and I don't have a whole lot to worry about at this point in time. Hallelujah. All right? So, it's all in the Bible, folks. It's always been in the Bible, and, you know, we are going to stand before Jesus one day, and it's going to be about how we did what he said to do, not how we did with the traditions that came from the Dark Ages. Right? Right. And Jesus is against tradition when it contradicts his word. And we think, oh, we're the New Testament Christians. Well, then why are you doing so many things that aren't in the Bible? All right. Well, we're out of time. And this is my last little lesson on the beach here. So, God bless you. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next time back in my office.